Welcome everybody to our Chocolatey Coffee Break live stream for November. We run two live streams every month, on the first and third Thursday. So this live stream on the third Thursday of November is our Chocolatey Community Coffee Break, where we talk about the chocolate community, what's happening, how you can get involved, and we talk to key community members. So our live stream also on the first Thursday of each month is a Chocolatey Product Spotlight, where we spotlight chocolatey products, recent releases, and important features. Today, we're going to be speaking to David Gardiner, longtime community member, community repository moderator, and Boxstarter maintainer. But before we do that, let me introduce myself and my co-host today. So my name is Paul Broadith, and I'm the technical engineering manager here at Chocolatey Software. I lead the engineering team that's responsible for the products that we talk about in our product spotlight live stream, and all the products that you use as well. My co-host today is Gary Ewan Park. He'll be taking us through or helping me go through some of the questions that we have for David today. So Gary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can do that. So as Paul said, my name is Gary Ewan Park. I am a senior software engineer here at Chocolatey. I'm part of the product owner team that helps drive the new features that are going into all of the Chocolatey components. So yeah, I'm excited to speak to David today to find out what he's all about.
Thanks, Gary. Both myself and Gary are also long-time community members ourselves. And like many other members of the Chocolatey team, the community is actually really, really important to us, as it is to David. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm David. David Gardiner. I'm excited to be here. Did you want me to sort of tell me a bit about myself?
Well, that's it. You've just jumped ahead, David. That's the first question.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. So before we start, we're building a community here on Twitch and on YouTube as well. So please follow us on Twitch and subscribe with a bell on YouTube, and you'll get notifications when we stream. And make sure you like or dislike the video as well on YouTube, so that we know what content you all want to see. That's really important to us. If we don't know what content you want to see, we can only put out content that we think that the community wants to see. So with that all said, David, we'll just jump into the questions. So with that very first one, we'll pretend that you didn't ask that question. So tell us a bit about yourself. Where do you come from? What do you do, etc.?
Yeah. My name's David Gardiner, as I said before. It still is the same name, and I'm based in Adelaide, South Australia. So sort of grown up here. I'm married with one wife, 3 kids, 4 chooks, and 1 turtle, and I think that's still accurate. Yep. I work for Six Pivot, a consulting company based in Australia. We've sort of got consultants around the country. And I also help run the Adelaide.net user group. I'm a Microsoft MVP. Outside of software, I guess, other sort of things I do. I don't mind getting on the bike and going for a bit of a ride. It's a really nice places to ride your bike around Adelaide, and involved with my local church. I like to get out in the garden when it's not raining or the big storms. We had a massive storm over the weekend and blew everything around. But not sure what else. I'm sure there'll be other stuff that'll come up throughout the chat today. So,
how long have you been an MVP?
I should have looked that up. I thought,
a long time. Too long if you can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's about maybe 7. So
wow.
It's more than 5, less than 10. So yeah. So which I think largely is related to the user group participation, but also a bit of open source stuff and Chocolatey and all kinds of other things. So yeah, done a bit of speaking at user groups and conferences as well. So
awesome. Gary, how long have you been an MVP? Not that I'm wanting to be a competition, I actually do. But how long have you been?
I have just got my 5th year blue band. So if I get renewed this year, it'll be 6, but it's currently 5. Yes, you've had 7 according to your profile on the MVP profile website.
Thank you for that fact check. Yeah.
You were first awarded it in 2015. That's what it
Yes.
says.
Yeah.
So, and what about you, Paul? Just when or are you? No, are you still an MVP or no? I
I
forget.
am an MVP. I can't remember. I'm looking at my thing. Is it 1, 2, 3? Sorry, I know I'm disappearing for video. 4. So this is 4. It's 4, yeah. So next year I get my 5-year. Assuming, of course, I'm renewed. Get my 5 years.
No, hold on. I think I lied. It's telling me 6 on my profile. I've had it 6 times. Sorry, according to my.
Okay.
I was
It's
first
not a
awarded in
competition.
2017.
No, it's not a competition until it involves Gary. Then it becomes.
I just looked myself up. I'll look up Paul while I'm here as well. Why not? But yeah, getting back to the topic of why we're here.
Yeah.
So, David, how did you get started in IT? Was that your first? Was that what you wanted to do, or did you fall into it? How did you get started?
Well, to be honest, as a young tacker, I think the first thing I wanted to do was actually, and probably I'm not alone in this, I wanted to drive a dump truck or a digger. And moving on from that, a bit older, I decided I want to be a TV camera person. And then I discovered computers. We were on a family holiday interstate, and we went to an open day at a university, and they had a computer room there. This is back in the early 80s. So we're talking green screens. And all I could see was that if you did this certain thing, you could print out a picture of Snoopy. But yeah, so whilst the rest of the family toured the whole campus of the university, I just stayed in the computer room and was just hooked. So then, yeah, started reading magazines and books, and high school, they had BBC Micros there, which you guys are probably familiar with that particular model of computer. And yeah, sort of spent a fair bit of time playing with that. Didn't get my own computer. I wanted one desperately. It was only when my dad needed to get one for a course he was studying that we finally got one. And so that kind of totally distracted me from my final year in high school, because instead of studying, I was playing on the computer. And yeah, went on to, I pretty much knew from, I guess, early high school, I wanted to do something with computers, and done some IT admin. So I have worked as a sysadmin. Did that long enough to realize that's not what I wanted to do full time. I really like the software development side of it, but it still meant that I'd had that taste and that involvement with that. So I know enough sysadmin to be dangerous, but also it comes in really handy to be able to chat to admin IT folk, because your software's got to run somewhere, so you need to have those conversations. So yeah, absolutely. That's still with me today. So yeah.
See, I remember a BBC Micro in our primary school, but I also only remember it as playing games. I didn't think it did anything other than playing games. And loaded the 5.25 inch disc into the disk drive. There was a little turn thing to lock it in. You loaded the game and you played the game, and that was all you did with it. I didn't get into. I was late getting into anything related to IT, but I do remember the BBC Micro in the primary school. Yeah.
No, the high school, they were networked, but for some strange reason, for the BBC Micro, you could either use the disk drive or you could use the network, and there was a physical toggle switch to flick between the two. So, and there was a reboot to switch. So you couldn't,
sometimes.
But yes. And the trick was that could you type in a program out of a magazine fast enough over lunchtime before you got kicked out and you lose it all.
See, that's the other thing I think I missed out on as well, because everyone says that. Because I grew up with, I didn't grow up with one in the house, but at some point my dad got a Commodore 64 and it just appeared in the house at some point. And anytime I say that to someone, they're like, "Oh, did you type in all the programs from the magazines and stuff?" I'm like, "No, I typed load after putting the game cassette into the tape player, and I typed load and I hit enter and I played a game. That's all I did on my Commodore 64. It wasn't until like now or more recently, people are like, "Oh, there's these magazines where you got this big screen of BASIC and you typed it in and it did stuff." And I was like, "Nope, I played computer games on it and that was it," which is a shame, but That's what I did.
Yeah. Yes. No, I desperately wanted one, and I had a friend who lived nearby. He had a Sinclair Spectrum.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was a bit pretty handy with a soldering iron, so he really sort of modded up his Spectrum.
Nice.
And,
Nice.
Yeah. But yes, no, it's yes, it's amazing what you can get now compared to what you had back then. So.
Well, there's a thing, I don't know if you see this, I'm getting off topic, but I feel I need to say it now. There's this whole resurgence of everything like old school computer related. And if you follow Scott Hanselman, there's this thing that you can get for the Commodore 64 where you can fake it into thinking that the wireless connection is a modem connection. So you can actually connect your Commodore 64 to a wireless connection to do stuff with it. And I'm like, that's totally amazing, but I've got no time to do stuff like that. I wish I did, but it would be great to because I've still got a Commodore 64 somewhere. It's in storage. And what I mean by that is at my mum and dad's house, and I need to go and get it at some point. And because it's in a box and it's written on it, do not throw out until you talk to Gary. It's packaged in a box. It's just not allowed to throw it out until I give the say so. So I need to go and pick it up at some point. Anyway, right, Paul, it's your question. It's your turn.
James has just said in the chat there that he's got a lovely FPGA-based Game Boy thing, and it's delightful. So yeah, just to go on your retro stuff, he's been rocking all the old cartridges that you put in there. I was going to say that I remember typing. I had a ZX81, and I remember typing the things in from the magazines, and then it wouldn't work. Then you had to, it was a lot of data lines with numbers. And if you typed one of those numbers, right, it was like, okay, which one? And it was pages and pages of these numbers. Which one did I type in wrong? So yeah, it was fun until it didn't work, and then you went, let's just put a game on. Yeah. Okay, jumping into the next question, David, when did you come across Chocolatey, and how did it happen?
Yeah, I looked back. I was trying to figure out when this would have been, and I think, as best I can tell, it would have been just before the Kickstarter, because I think that's where this T-shirt comes from, actually. I think I've been following Rob on probably on Twitter, if not just seeing some of the stuff he'd done previously, so I'd been using Chocolatey a bit, and I guess when the Kickstarter came around, I was like, oh, this sounds like it's really got a chance to go somewhere. So that's the only Kickstarter I've ever been involved with. But it was successful. I got a T-shirt, and I guess the rest is history as far as the companies go. But and no, I just I just found it a really useful tool, and could see the potential of it becoming more well known. So yeah. So I can't give you a year, but it's probably I don't know, 2014, 2015 maybe. Yeah.
I think that sounds like certainly a similar story to mine. I think it's similar to you as well, Gary. I came across it a little bit before the Kickstarter as well, and then the Kickstarter happened. I thought, oh yeah, a bit like you, this has got legs. Let's back this. So I got one of the T-shirts as well. And I managed to finally get one of the hoodies, apparently the very last hoodie that Chocolatey had. That was a fluke. That was not anything else. I think, Gary, did you back the Kickstarter as well?
I did. So I'd been involved in some discussions with Rob prior to the Kickstarter happening, so I knew it was happening. So I at the time I was already part of the quote unquote community, but I was like, I also wanted to back and show willing that I thought this had legs to do something with. So yeah, I ended up throwing in for the hoodie as well. So I got the hoodie and the T-shirt. And it was the black version that I got as well, because there was a white version of the T-shirt that you could opt in to get as well. I know that some folks, like say Jan, has got the white version of the hoodie. Not the hoodie, the T-shirt, sorry. But yeah, that was a long time ago. But yes, I can say I've still got it's over there on the coat rack. I've got my hoodie over there.
The cool thing about the T-shirt is that people who don't know what Chocolatey as a software tool is, they just see chocolate and they go, "Oh, that's a cool T-shirt." So,
agreed.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I didn't mention that I do, I mean, I'm in a band with some friends, and I certainly have done a few gigs wearing the Chocolatey t-shirt as well. So,
your band's not called the Chocolatey Experience, is it?
No, but that is a great name for a band. And I think if there isn't, you should definitely have a house band. So, and that should be its name. So
I won't be the singer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that t-shirt is a throwback to the original coloring scheme that we had for the icon as well. It's the brownish logo that we had at a distant point in time.
Yeah, no, okay. I do have a pretty decent t-shirt collection, which is largely IT/software related. And I do have to cull it every now and again because it just doesn't fit in the wardrobe. But this is one that has passed the test a few times and stayed there. So
good stuff. Yeah, to hear it. Okay, so in terms of continuing on, kind of questioning around Chocolatey, do you remember when you made your first kind of community contribution to Chocolatey, whether it was through a package, whether it was through a contribution to Chocolatey or Boxstarter, etc.? Do you remember when that was or what it was?
Yeah, as best I can tell, I think it might have been for Beyond Compare, which at the time was being maintained by Brendan, or Shift Key, as he's known on Twitter. He now works for GitHub. And he wasn't always the quickest at updating the package when there was a new version coming out. And so I kept submitting pull requests, and then eventually I think he sort of said, well, do you just want to take over the package? And I think I think by that time he might have not been using Windows anymore. So so I think that one, it was a vested interest in me because it was a tool I've used, and probably one of the first software tools I paid money for out of my own pocket, just because it was reasonably priced and did a great job. And having the Chocolatey package there to be able to keep it up to date, I reckon that was the one. So yeah,
stuff. Well, no, we appreciate your time as both a moderator and a maintainer of packages.
Absolutely.
Because yours was probably one of the first names I started seeing as it's David again, or I recognize the name and the avatar that went with it. So yeah, you're one of the older community members that I remember being involved. So no, thank you.
Veteran, Gary, veteran.
A veteran. That's a good way of putting it. Yes.
Few grey hairs there. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you start actively participating in the community round about the time that you were putting those pull requests in? Because we were using Gator way back then. I keep saying that, and it hurts the veteran members a bit more because they remember the pain of Gator. But if that wasn't the time, when did you really kind of start being active in the community?
Yeah, no, I think that probably was the impetus as far as sort of helping out some other packages that I was using, and then on Gitter a bit, probably not every day kind of thing, but sort of jumping in there occasionally. And then I guess for me it was more just then finding a few other tools that I used that weren't in the community repository yet, and creating packages for those, and just sort of evolving that as a bit of a side hobby, I suppose, of okay, now I've got them here, how do I keep them up to date, or reverse engineering how these things get installed so that I can automate it. All that kind of thing. Obviously some things are easier to do than others. There's some that I would love to have a package for that I just still haven't figured out how to do, just because they've got sort of strange things about having to register and that. That's probably that was more of my involvement, I guess, was around the packages. And then there's probably a few things that I noticed with Chocolatey itself. Submitted a few pull requests just to try and solve problems that I was having to sort of improve how it worked. So yeah.
So something I'd noticed recently was during package moderation is that we're still getting a huge number of unique patches, and packages that are for the first time, they're just being submitted. And you think way back at the beginning, that there wasn't as many packages on the community repository, so you would see a lot of that. But even today, we're still seeing a lot of that, and that really surprised me when I was starting to think about it. That you would think, well, most of the software's in the community repository, but there's still new packages, a lot of new packages coming in that we've never seen before.
Yeah,
it's really
surprising. And some of it's new stuff, and some of it's really old stuff that people are finding that they're just creating packages for. So
yeah,
it's
really nice to see. And it kind of reminds me how healthy our community is, and the community repository maintainers and how important they are as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it, I guess, as it grows bigger and bigger, you run the risk of getting like duplicate packages or that. It sort of becomes a bit more of a challenge, but it often means that I'll find the tools and I'll go and check on Chocolatey. Yep, there's a package there for it. So
it gets to the stage for me where I'm not installing software unless it's on Chocolatey, not because I'm some sort of religious zealot about it, but just because I don't want the pain of keeping that software up to date.
Yes.
And if I happen to find something I really, really need to install, I'll go away and create a package for it, just because I don't want to have to make sure it's up to date all the time. I just want it in something that'll keep it up to date.
There's been a couple of times in the past when I've been like, I don't know if that chocolate package exists on Chocolatey, but I'm just going to attempt the Choco install and then what I think the package name might be. And 9 times out of 10, it's just worked. Or if it didn't work, if I go and search for it, there's a slight variation on, it might have included a hyphen but to separate the names of it just depends on the maintainer. But I remember specifically a situation where I was working with someone who was not a Windows fan, let's put it that way, and they were touting the benefits of using apt-get and yum on their chosen operating system, and they were like, you would never be able to find this sort of package on Windows. I'm like, let me just try that. And I can't remember what the package was, but it was Choco install, boom, and it just started downloading and installing it. And he was like, oh, no, we do have some of the things that you've got over there in your world over here too. So it was a shining light into what it can be done. So But in terms of your Chocolatey usage, then is it predominantly for yourself from a personal standpoint, or do you use it at work within your organization? And if so, can you speak to kind of how you used it and what you're doing with it?
I guess it's probably largely personal, or even for work. If I need a tool, it'll be I'll prefer using Chocolatey for that. So I guess where I'm working now, it's really an individual choice how people manage the software, their tools, and being a consulting company, we're working with different clients. So, but it's certainly something that if I have the ability to use, and even for things like I do a fair bit of build automation, Azure DevOps and GitHub and those kind of things. And so often you'll need to have extra tools being installed as part of a build process. So having Chocolatey there is an easy way to do that. Not the only way, but sometimes that's the easiest way to get something on the machine that you need to get, which isn't on there already. So
that's an interesting point in terms of CI systems, the likes of Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. Chocolatey is already on the build agent that you get. So assuming you're using a hosted agent rather than a self-hosted one, Chocolatey is already on the box. So if you need to install something, it is a Choco install away to get it there for your build.
And even if you're doing things like, I mean, obviously it's not so relevant for Linux agents, but if you've got Windows agents and potentially using container jobs, you still got to get the software into the Docker image in the first place. And so a tool like Chocolatey can be really helpful for that, just because it can be all driven through the command line. You don't have to worry about any UI popping up that's going to not work. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So you're kind of one of the people who are responsible for Boxstarter and kind of longevity of that project. How did you first come across Boxstarter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably, I guess, it was solving a problem that I had, and so I guess I was familiar with Matt, who sort of originated the project, and yeah, had sort of thought, oh, that's interesting. And as far as being able to install multiple packages, but also deal with reboots. So because that's always the tricky thing, that you'd get so far and then you go, I've got to restart now. On I go again. So particularly the idea of getting a machine and getting it all set up overnight. Before Boxstarter, it was like you'd set it going and you'd come home and think it was all finished, but no, there was a dialogue there waiting for you to say yes, go ahead, or confirm or something. So it'd been doing nothing the whole time that you were waiting for it. So yeah, I really was drawn to that idea of not having, I guess it's a bit like the whole sort of cattle and pets kind of approach, but bring that back to your own desktop, that it could be much more of a disposable thing that you could rebuild relatively easily if you want to. So with Boxstarter, that sort of gave me that ability to go, okay, I can go into Windows and say reset this machine so it's back to a vanilla Windows image. Then run my Boxstarter script, and a few hours later, depending on your internet speed, then I should have pretty much all of my tools there ready to go. There might be a few little things I need to jump in then and sort of customize, like your email signature in Outlook or something like that. But and set up a few license files. But otherwise, you've got all your stuff there, and you can be productive rather than spending the whole day doing click, click, click next and trying to get stuff installed. So I thought that was quite compelling, to be able to rebuild a machine really quickly. Not for me, not having an IT department that was going to do that for me. I could basically do it for myself. I guess equally, an IT department could use it to do that kind of thing as well. But for me, it was just really, how can I use some of those same kind of techniques for myself? And particularly when you feel like, I think this machine's just getting so much mess on it that I really need to start from scratch. And the thought of that could be quite daunting, but using a tool like Boxstarter, it's actually not that hard. So
no. So according to the history of GitHub, your first PR into Boxstarter was back in 2016.
Wow.
So there you go. April 2016, so over 6 years ago, was your first contribution.
A veteran.
Again. Yeah. There you go.
I was going to say that I'm actually going to take the time tomorrow to rebuild my laptop, and Boxstarter is what I'm going to use for that. And it takes, I think the bit that reminded me to talk about it was when you said it can be daunting. And it can, because you have to, first of all, know all the software that's on your machine. So if it's all installed as Chocolatey packages, it's fairly straightforward. You export those packages in a packages.config, stick it in a USB key so that you can have it after the laptop's been wiped, and then you can install all of that with Chocolatey again and use Boxstarter as part of that to do all those reboots. And it's not as daunting. And as you said, okay, you've installed everything. There will be things to configure. Sometimes if you've got a client for your email, you might need to log into Gmail or configure the signature, as you said, or do some logins for other software. But 90% of that's done. The software's there. It's just those little extra bits that's done. And rather than taking a full day, it's only going to take maybe 2 or 3 hours to do all of that. You install the software and then configuring it for you. So it takes away that pain.
Yeah, it can be quite useful it's almost like a reset to go, okay, what do I really need? What tools have I got on here that I'm not actually using anymore? And so that Boxstarter script becomes a bit of a sort of, here are the essential things that I actually care about. And so often if I'm planning to do that rebuild, I'll go back to the Boxstarter script and compare that to what I've actually got and go, yes, I need to update that, or like Visual Studio, not 2019. Actually, I'm using 2022 now, so better change that, or fonts, or all those kind of things. Or actually, I'm not using this tool anymore, so I can get rid of that. Don't need to worry about that. So.
So that's part of the mistake that I make, and that's why I end up with 2017, 2019, and 2022 all installed on my machine for Visual Studio, because I keep them all. There we go. So we've established that you are a veteran within the Chocolatey community. So you've seen Chocolatey develop and Boxstarter develop. So what is, if you had a magic wand, what is the one feature that you would like to see in Chocolatey and Boxstarter? What do you think is missing? What would you wave your magic wand at to make available?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm pretty satisfied with what it does at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I had thought about this question, and the only thing I can think of is not really something that Chocolatey can probably solve. It's really just make it faster, and I think Chocolatey is pretty fast. There may be some performance improvements that they could make. I don't know. I think largely the speed comes down to my bandwidth. So, yeah, but yeah, and I think I wonder if there's some kind of interactions that Chocolatey has with Windows, and I suspect Windows probably isn't always as fast as responding to say what's installed and that kind of thing. So yeah, but it's kind of a general thing. It is performance, but performance is not bad. But yeah,
that's fair. I mean, there's definitely some areas in there that there's long-standing issues with, for example, Choco outdated, taking a while to figure out what support you've got installed and what's available upstream, etc. There's potential for that getting better with the concept of a local package index, which I think was spoken about before in a community stream. So the idea there is that we proactively say what packages are available, condense them into a local index that's then available in your machine. So when you do a Choco outdated, you're then saying it's a very, very quick operation at that point, because you're going against the cached index that you have locally on your machine. That obviously has trade-offs, because then there's potentially outdated information in what's being called via the outdated command. But that would improve that sort of thing. But yeah, no, it's a fair point. There is active work at the minute as well in terms of changing some of the core infrastructure of Chocolatey, which as we've seen with and we're not jumping to this, but if and when we get to .NET Core has seen significant improvements in just general execution of code under .NET Core. So we would hopefully reap the benefit of that when we make that jump as well. But yeah, no, that's a fair comment.
There's been I think there's a couple of features raised, or issues raised that suggested perhaps we look at parallel downloads as well. I don't know how that will work. I think they've just been suggested. I don't think anybody's kind of really looked at it, but again, that might help improve some of that. Maybe even downloading the one file rather than doing different downloads together. Do the one down, but do different streams and then join them all together. At the end, that's something that a lot of products, a lot of browsers do. You get plugins for that where they'll do downloading a file with different streams and then joining them all at the end. So that's potentially something we could do as well. But yeah, performance is, particularly the package indexes that Gary said, that is a big thing that we want to do, because I think that will see a lot of improvement for people when we're looking for just, even if they're querying packages as well. What packages exist? We've got a local index. We can just get it all from there. So yeah, but there's a lot of infrastructure work at the back end to do that as well, because it's a complete different way of working.
Yeah, no, I mean, Gary, you mentioned Choco outdated, which I do use that a lot. Actually, I also use the Rocco version.
Oh, the Chocolatey version, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I should just create an alias to do, because I always run it with like ignore the pin stuff, and
Yep.
yeah, because I don't know why you wouldn't, and and yeah, that one does seem like it could really benefit from some parallelization. So yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that if once we get to having a V3 feed for the packages on, say, Chocolate.org, I think that will some of the infrastructure that comes along with that package index, it doesn't fall out of it. We don't get it for free, but it opens up the potential for having that information available, and then just quote unquote caching that locally and then being able to query that locally. It's very similar to what like Brew does on a Mac. So one of the first things that Brew does when you do an operation is it will go off and update its local index. So then any future operations that you're doing is doing it against that local index. So it's reducing the amount of overhead and queries that needs to be done. So it would be something very similar to that in Chocolatey itself to keep that cached index up to date, so that when you're querying, you're not querying against a month's old worth of data. You're querying against a reasonably up-to-date version of that data. And I think that would greatly help in terms of overall performance. So yeah, like I say, it's on my list, but my list is quite big. So at some point in the future, we'll get that.
So David, yeah, we've talked about being involved with Boxstarter. We've talked about some uses of Boxstarter. Where do you see Boxstarter go in the future? Where would you like to see it go in the future?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, my role it's probably been a little bit more in the background, I think. Whereas I guess someone like Manfred's really taken the lead in innovating the tool. So that I think that's really good. So I think, yeah, just to be a healthy, well-maintained product that, is providing value to the community and for personal and even commercial use. I think it's got great potential. So, yeah, it kind of, going back there a few years, it did sort of go to sleep, I guess, for a little bit, but it just feels like it's just had a bit of a new lease on life. Version 3 coming out and just feels like that's sort of been unblocked a bit as far as being able to move forward. So yeah, I don't know that it needs to have every bell and whistle, but just to have a healthy ecosystem of people being interested in maintaining it and keeping it current. So yeah, I don't think it needs to do much more than what it does now. I know. Yeah, there's potential features to add to it, but as long as it can do the core stuff really well, then that sounds good to me.
I think I'd agree with that Boxstarter should really just focus on what it does rather than add all sorts of bells and whistles, because it does what it does really well, and I'd hate to see it grow arms and legs and do things that are not so well. It has a really particular focus. And I think some maybe internal refactoring and making things easier to maintain, and adding the odd bell and whistle there, I think, keeps it still focused on what it does.
Yeah, I think some of the changes that were made for version 3 probably mean that you can start to. Previously, it was really just focused around installing Chocolatey packages, and you could put other stuff in the install script, but it didn't always actually do anything. Whereas I think now with version 3 and moving ahead, you'll more easily be able to just put in other PowerShell commandlets in there and interact more with Chocolatey as what you could before. So I think that will help things as well.
I think breaking the coupled version of Chocolatey, which I think was 0.10.7, and making it use the Chocolatey, the latest one or the one you have installed, has really opened up the potential for what it can do now. And we're no longer sort of tied to that very old version. And it was done for reasons. That's not criticism of Matt. That was done for very good reasons. But we've got to a stage now where we can untie it.
Yeah, well, and if I remember correctly, I don't think that was originally the plan moving forward. I think we were going to try and stick with that. And it was really because we ran up against some obstacles that we sort of consider, is there another way we can do this? And so then to essentially, I guess, go out of process to use Chocolatey. Yeah. And it was almost like, oh, why wasn't this done before? There probably was a good reason originally. But being able to do that just opens up some opportunities there.
Agreed.
So the next question we're going to jump onto, Gary, do you want to just actually explain all of this? Because I'm always explaining it. What so it's just for the audience, really. Explain what.
Yeah, no. So the next question kind of focuses around kind of community maintainers and what a community maintainer is. So just to let people know what does happen.
Moderator, Gary.
Did I say mod? I sorry, apologies. I in my head I said moderator, but clearly I said maintainer through my mouth. So yeah, as one of the things that the Chocolatey Community Repository, so community.chocolatey.org, that's where all the Chocolatey packages that are public are available. Now they are maintained by package maintainers, but they go through an automated series of checks, both package validator, package verifier, and package scanner. And if, as we spoke about earlier, it's a brand new package, what we have then is also a human moderation step where we basically say, is this package okay? Or is this package trying to do something nefarious? Is this package trying to do something that's not intended to do? Or is it trying to do things in a way that's not recommended? So the human moderation element to that is I describe it as it's the worst thing and it's the best thing about the community package repository. It's great because people consuming the packages have a kind of a reassurance that the packages have a base level of standards that they're being adhered to. But it's also the worst thing about it because human moderation is fallible in the sense that people go on holiday and people take a break from doing moderation, so the moderation queue can get backed up in things. Now, the reason that we're saying all of this is because, like Paul and I, you are one of the moderators on the Chocolatey Community Repository. So, yeah, how long have you been a moderator, and why did you get started in doing it? What drew you into that sort of area of the Chocolatey community?
Yeah, so I think I'd probably been using Chocolatey for a while and creating my own packages and back. And so I guess to answer the question, I became a moderator around sort of 2016, around August, if my email archive is correct. And I guess what prompted that involvement was submitting my own packages and not always seeing them get approved or reviewed that quickly. Sometimes you'd get it done within an hour, and that was awesome. That doesn't happen so much these days. There's usually a little bit more of a time lag, but yeah, and so that was great. But then sometimes it might take a few days. I thought, oh, why is it taking so long? And I think that prompted a sort of a conversation with Rob at the time. I was sort of, do you need more moderators? And it's like, yes, we do. So, so that was, yeah. And I guess by that time, Rob was familiar with me and felt like I'd probably be okay to bring on board and join the team. Yeah, so I did a quick induction with Rob about what was involved and yeah, and I guess even then there was a reasonable number of moderators, but not all of them were active. In fact, I think some by that time had already pretty much finished. So, yeah, I guess it's something that I think there's always interested in bringing in new people and just because it's like a season in life, essentially, that sometimes you've got an interest in doing stuff, and other times people, that's not for them anymore, and they move on to other things. Or I guess for me, I'm probably not doing as many package reviews as I used to, but occasionally I'll jump in there and do a few. The other thing is answering email requests that come through as a moderator. So that's, for me at the moment, that's probably a slightly easier thing, because I can often just do that. I can see a question, I know the answer, bang, deal with it straight away. But the moderating packages, it usually takes a little bit more time to read through what's going on, and does it all look fine, or do I need to respond to the author to say you need to solve these issues here, or can you just clarify what's happening? So yeah.
No, again, so we thank you for your time and effort over the years. Again, I mean, that's kind of also where I got to know your name through the moderation side of things. So yeah, I realized that you've been around for a while. I didn't quite realize it was that long, but I guess it makes sense that you have been. So absolutely.
It also highlights there is more to being a moderator than just moderate packages. You know, as you said, that those emails that come in, and there's sometimes you'll get one or two. Sometimes there'll be a flood of those emails coming into the moderators list where they need responding to. So that, yeah, there's other things other than just moderating packages that moderators do.
Yeah.
But can you tell us? Sorry,
I was saying, I mean, the emails are really, there's a few categories. There's the why hasn't my package been moderated question, and so that the general answer to that is there is a queue. You can go look. You can see the queue on the website, and so then you can get a sense of where your package is in the queue. And that as we've said, moderators are generally volunteers that do it in their spare time, and sometimes people have got a lot of spare time, and other times, unfortunately, we don't. There's other things that are happening. So there's sort of peaks and troughs, I suppose. Ideally, we'd have enough volunteers to cover that out, but that doesn't always happen. The other one is occasionally packages fall into disrepair, and maybe the original maintainer is not involved in that, or not interested in maintaining that package anymore, or they've left the community. So other people want to take over the package. As a process for that to happen. So quite often we're involved with that, just to check that the process has been followed, and if it has, then sort of hand over that package to someone else. And then there's other random questions we get. So some of them are related to the commercial side, which I'll leave those alone. The Chocolatey employees can handle those, and other ones we can handle if it's just a general question, or point them towards the Discord discussions, and so they can get help there if they need. So yeah.
So, I mean, we've talked about that email part of being important, and I think maybe updates to our documentation as we go forward as well would help with some of those questions. It's not always obvious, for example, how you pick up a package, or the Chocolatey or the Chocolatey software or the Chocolatey team don't actually maintain packages. We that's a community effort, and we generally leave that there. But what do you see the most important role of a moderator as? Yeah,
I think it goes back to the earlier point that it's that human intervening in that process, particularly early on in the package when it's brand new, that you're a set of eyeballs that's looking at that package and assessing, is this a package that's going to be okay for people to use? Like, is it behaving in a predictable way? It's not doing anything surprising. Is the description make sense? If I look at the description, do I understand what this is? And the way it installs and uninstalls, is that all reasonable? So that you're acting as a bit of a quality control. So yeah, I think that really sets apart the Chocolatey community and the repository, public repository that we have from other options. We've got that. So yeah, there is the downside that it does take time to do that, but I think the community benefits from that, of people checking stuff and really trying to raise the bar for quality and that. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing for me, that it gives me that level of confidence that the package someone has looked at that and said, yep, this meets our criteria. It's an acceptable level of quality for it to then be installed on someone else's computer. So yeah.
Okay. So we've maybe kind of broached this a little bit to an extent, but again, we've established that you're a veteran person and involved in the community for a while. You've been a moderator for longer than I thought you had been, so you've been around there for a little while longer as well. But what keeps you coming back? What keeps you being involved? What is it about Chocolatey or the Chocolatey community that keeps you wanting to be involved? What is it? If you can pinpoint a couple of things, what would be those things?
Yeah, I think for me, the Chocolatey ecosystem and then the community repository, they just got such great value. And so I get something out of that. So it helps me personally as far as being able to install stuff myself. But then often the things that I want to install are the things that other people want to install. So so I feel like it's really it's something that I have the skills to do. So there's lots of things I can't do. There's some things I think I can do, and it turns out I can't. But there's a lot of things I know I can't do. But this is one thing I can do, and I've got some skills. And so I just see that that it's something I can contribute back to the community. It's something that you talking about previously, like those seasons. Sometimes I've got more time, sometimes I've got less time. So, and it really is that sort of thing where I might go for weeks where I'm just busy with other things, with work or family or whatever. But then I don't know, it might be just sitting down. I've got a spare 5 minutes, a spare half an hour, whatever. I'll jump on and do some reviews or answer some emails or whatever. It's the kind of thing that fits in with that kind of way of working. So
again, something when you were talking there, David, this might seem obvious to us, but it might not seem obvious to anybody watching this or the rest of the community. But moderators are not paid. There is no reciprocation. We don't give you anything for being a community moderator. You get t-shirts and stickers, but everybody kind of gets that when they're at events, or you don't get anything special. And I think that's really important to highlight, that you do this and the other moderators do this because they love the community. They can give something back. They enjoy doing what they're doing, and it's not a paid gig. There's no money. There's nothing that you get out of this beyond our thanks and the thanks of the community to do it. So that is really important to say. And as I said, it's fairly obvious to me, being from the community, and Gary as well, but it might not be obvious to everybody else. You volunteered to do this, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully the rest of the community do as well. I think they do.
Yeah. No, it is something that, for me, it's something I can fit into those little gaps. So there's some things you might choose to do, like sort of volunteer for a local community organization or something, and that might need to be a whole evening once a week or something. But I guess that's the nice thing about being an online community, is that you can really do as little or as much as you want. It's sort of up to you. So
So moving on to our next section that we'll probably go through quite quick. We've actually got about 5 minutes left, but this is a flexible stream. We've gone over before, mainly because Gary can't stop talking. So we're fairly flexible. But anyway, we'll move on to common questions that we ask everybody. And I've said this many times, but it's really in honor of Richard Campbell and Run As Radio. I always thought that the questions he asked was great for, those 3 or 4 questions that he asked everybody. So the very first one is, what is your favorite coding language and why?
Yeah, so I think I'd have to say C#, but followed closely by PowerShell. So but I think C# just it's a language I've used for, I guess, well, you call me a veteran, so I guess I haven't used it since the first version of .NET, but I've certainly been using .NET since it came out. I actually started out using VB and enjoyed that. It was only when I changed jobs that I started using C#. But no, I just found it really productive. I like .NET. It's just really powerful toolkit to solve software problems with, and the C# language. I've found that just pretty much does everything I want it to do. But yeah, that PowerShell I mentioned as a close second, just because particularly around the automation and scripting, and I guess because it's built with .NET as well, so you can sort of cross over between the two. I find that really useful. So I know you asked for one, but I'm going to give you two. So.
So related to that, then, so what is the IDE that you find yourself using most of the time for doing C# and/or PowerShell? And what do you love it? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts on it?
So if we're sticking with IDE as a strict definition, then I'd say Visual Studio. I know there's some alternatives out there, but VS does the job for me, and I feel like it's certainly got a lot better over the last few years, particularly with shifting things into out of process, and 64-bit as well. Has been a big improvement. If it was just editor, then I'd say VS Code. I spend a lot of time in VS Code, and probably at the moment I'm spending more time in code than I am in Visual Studio, just with the kind of work I'm doing. So
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Saw Paul prepping for the next question there.
Yeah, that's me prepping. Although I did prep for the next question because I pulled the board off the wall. So we've got Gary's wrong pronunciation of Nupkeg, Board of Shame here, as you've probably seen in previous streams. Gary's obviously put Nupkeg on the screen there. What is the correct way to pronounce NUPKG? How would you pronounce it?
Yeah, so I think Gary was the first person I heard pronounce it the way he pronounces it, and I don't know if I had food in my mouth, but if I did, it would have been quickly spat out because I thought, what the? And I have heard some other people say it that way now, but it sounds too much like nutmeg, and that just seems weird. So yeah, a new package. That's the way David, I've always.
I was relying on you here. No words.
Sorry,
so that's three to nothing, Gary. That I'm actually winning there with that one. So thanks for that, David. Cool.
Words.
Don't know if you're going to pull this one out.
Say that again.
I don't know if you're going to pull this one back at all.
I am choosing the next guest. It's as simple as that. I am choosing the next three guests.
Well, I was going to say, you're going to have to...
You in different hats. Is that what you're going to pick?
But you see, this came up yesterday, but based on that, then, we need to start a new poll for how you pronounce this one, because that came up in conversation yesterday. Paul didn't even know what a snupkeg was, but if you pronounce nupkeg as new package, is that a snoo package? What do you do with a snupkeg?
Yeah, does anyone even use them? I guess would be my question.
Well, they have become less required, given that you've got things like that's not GitLink, SourceLink was the one that's they're not as required as they maybe used to be. But yeah, Paul found out about snupkegs yesterday because he hadn't heard about them before, and then he didn't like my pronunciation of that one either. But the snupkeg is just it's how you pronounce it.
If you'd have said symbols package, I'd have went, oh, okay, I understand what that. But snupkeg, sorry, no idea. No. So Gary's making things up as we go along so that he feels superior to everyone else in the team. That's what it is.
But anyway, moving swiftly on, after that wrong pronunciation of nutcake, what is your favourite chocolatey biscuit and or cookie? And
it's a biscuit because Australian, a Tim Tam. So and they are so Australian biscuit. It's sort of biscuit with sort of stuff in the middle and then wrapped in chocolate. And I guess the most well-known thing that I always try and introduce people to if they've got a tea or a coffee or a hot chocolate is you bite the opposite corners off the Tim Tam biscuit and use it as a straw to suck up the hot liquid, which then basically you've got limited time to. It's called a Tim Tam slam, and you've got limited time to do this before it collapses in your fingers and you lose it all. But suck up, it sort of makes the inside of the biscuit go all mushy, and then you just slam the whole thing in your mouth. Make sure you get it in your mouth and don't miss. And then it's just like this warm mouthful of chocolate and warm drink, and it's just yum. And,
so this isn't a David thing. This is an actual thing.
No, it's an actual thing. And I'm sure there's probably TikTok videos of it, but no, it's a real thing. So you can try it with other biscuits to varying degrees of success, but Tim Tams seem to work the best. So it basically turns the biscuit into a chocolate straw. But yeah, you got to move pretty quick.
Quick.
So otherwise, you just sort of falls on the floor and you feel sad. So don't do that.
And if we can do that with other biscuits, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so the Australian biscuit, they do distribute them overseas. I think you can get them in the US. I don't know if you can get them in the UK, but certainly previous trips when I used to go to the MVP Summit in Washington, in Redmond, my case would be half full of Tim Tam biscuits to share with people. So particularly we have different varieties here as well. It's not just the plain chocolate ones. There's other variations so that you might not be able to get overseas. So that's my vote for a chocolate biscuit.
I think that's our most involved answer from that one. Most people just say the biscuit and that's it. But no, there's a real story behind it, which is great.
Yeah, biscuit plus thing to do with biscuit.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so as I kind of mentioned, we're a couple of minutes over, which is fine. But we've got some wrapping up questions, so take the last kind of 5 minutes or so to wrap up. So what is your favourite memory regarding Chocolatey? For example, maybe meeting some people for the first time or attending a conference with Chocolatey, etc.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. First off, it's rainbow lorikeets. So if you don't know, a rainbow lorikeet is a bird. It's a bird native to Australia. And in fact, we have them in the trees around where I live. And they love eating... this is going somewhere, trust me. They love to eat the flowers in the trees. They also love to eat my fruit on my fruit trees, and I don't like that. So Rob used to have, I don't know if he still has this, but his profile picture was him with a rainbow lorikeet on his shoulder. And
that's ringing a bell.
Yeah. So and that always struck me because I know he's not Australian, he's American, but to have this Australian bird on his shoulder, I thought, what? And I was kind of conflicted because it's Rob seems like a nice guy. I haven't actually met him in person, but he seems pretty nice. But to have this bird that was responsible for the loss of a lot of the apples off my apple tree. So there's that sort of and so often now if I see the lorikeets in the trees around my home, I'll remember, I'll be reminded of Chocolatey. But I guess, yes, also, and I think it might have even been the last MVP summit I got to go to and met some of you guys that involved with the Chocolatey community for the first time. And so, yeah, that was pretty cool to actually finally meet some people that I've from overseas that I've had stuff to do with, to actually sit down and meet them in person. So, yeah.
No, agreed.
Awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my turn.
Yes, it is, Gary.
I was actually just reminiscing in terms of, because that was the first time that we'd met David, and then because you're involved in the cake project as well, and some of the cake team were there as well. So it was for me, that was one of the best. I'm not going to say conferences, but one of the best things I've been to, just because it brought together so many people that I've worked with on the internet, but never actually met in person. So no, it was a great conference to be involved in, and seeing everyone putting faces to names and Twitter avatars and all that sort of stuff. So no, it was a very good time. And if I get renewed and they do another in-person MVP summit, it would be good to do that again. Obviously,
yes,
that's all dependent on lots of things. Yeah. So I guess the closing out question is, so what's the future looking like for you? What is it you're going to be working on? Have you got any plans? Chocolatey and Boxstarter in particular, but are you working on anything else that you want to share with people or let people know about?
I guess, I mean, the Chocolatey involvement will continue. That's something that just keeps ticking along, and whether that's just creating new packages for tools I come across that aren't there yet, or moderating. Certainly also sort of keep a bit of involvement just with open source in general. So either sort of submitting PRs for other things or ideas of my own that I want to work on. I've got some Visual Studio extensions that I've sort of been maintaining for a few years. Some are more up to date than others. Just some other tools I've been working on. There's quite a few that have had their day in the sun and they're now sort of almost let out to pasture, in that they're not really ones I work on anymore. And just fitting that in with everything else that's going on in life. It's always like, so you see some people, they just seem to do so much stuff, and I think, how do they get the time to do that? Just trying to do little bits and pieces where I can, and balancing that in with everything else that's going on. But no, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Mastodon now, and on GitHub, obviously. Involved with Chocolatey. The user group, that's sort of ticking along nicely. We have a conference. Actually, you have a DDD conference in the UK. We have that in Australia, and that's run in a number of different cities. So I was involved with that in Adelaide, and so we're hoping to get that back up and running as well. So So
I mean, the DDD conferences here in the UK, I went through a spell of going to everyone I could, because they're a great event. They're a great way to get involved with the community. I've not been to one in a long time though, but I see that they are starting to ramp up again. And there's DDD North and DDD East Anglia coming up, I think. So there's they're a great. If anyone doesn't know about them, definitely check them out. And it is great to have seen it jumped from here in the UK out to other places as well. It's a great endeavor. Hopefully we can get the Adelaide one back up and running, but no, it's Brisbane are running in December. I think Perth ran earlier in the year, Perth in Western Australia, and I think Melbourne maybe next year. So I think this is the community. We've talked about it tonight, about the connections that we've made, and again, it's just another way of getting to know people and making those connections, that either personal or friendship or professional networking kind of thing. So it's all good. I mean, and it is. I mean, and we've kind of spoken around it, the meeting in person that we did earlier, but I mean, that is one of the. I went in that one event. I think I went from literally Twitter avatars to people's actual names to meeting them in person for the first time. So it's having that physical connection with folks as well, and meeting them and being able to have a conversation with them is great. I mean, as you say, I mean, you are literally at the other side of the world from us. So we were brought together in one place, and it was great. Great to meet in person, absolutely. So
I think we're kind of bringing our stream today to a close. I want to say thanks to David for joining us today and being interrogated by me and Gary. And thanks to Gary for being my ever-suffering co-host. And thanks to everybody today for watching us. Really appreciate it. Please follow us on Twitch and subscribe with the bell on YouTube, and you'll get notifications when we stream. And make sure, as I said at the beginning, if you like or dislike a video on YouTube, we know what kind of content that you want to see. Our next product spotlight stream is on the 1st of December at 5 p.m. UTC. We will look at an overview for the whole year. What is Chocolatey released, what have we given the community and our customers over the last 12 months. So we're looking at, as I said, 1st of December at 5 p.m. UTC. So join us there. You can find us on Twitter and you'll get all of the updates for that. That's our Chocolatey Nougat account. We're also on Mastodon, just like David. We're at chocolatey@fostodon.org. Everybody seems to be migrating to Mastodon, and it's actually an awesome platform. It's really nice to be on there. Our next community coffee break, where we'll do something. We haven't finalized what we're going to do for the next one, but that is actually the 15th December at 5 p.m. UTC. So it's the 3rd Thursday of the month, and the product spotlight's on the 1st Thursday of the month, as we talked about at the beginning. So again, David, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. It was really great to talk to you and get all of that information, you know, where you're going in the future and how you were involved in the community in Chocolatey from the start. So, and thank you again for all your time being a moderator and a community participant. We really, really do appreciate it. And thank you, Gary, for yeah, just as I said, our suffering co-host. Any last thoughts before we finish up?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Just thank you very much, as you said to David. We'll let him get to bed. I think it must be almost bedtime at that side of the world. So thank you again for making time for us. And yeah, we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.